Welcome to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. Welcome to the extra time segment for Crystal Palace 4, Everton 0. I can't even believe for the life of me that I actually just read that scoreline out. It's an absolute horror show at Selhurst Park. We're out the FA Cup as a result. And all the goodwill that came after the league win against Newcastle seems to have dissipated again as we go into the international break on a low note, a very sour note. Back to looking over our shoulders in the league, I think, after a real disastrous performance. Where do we even start? I'm joined by Mike from the Unholy Trinity podcast. Mike, where do you start with that? It was just horrific from start. Well, near enough start to finish, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think, when you look at the game, you watch it back and you try and sort of pick out the positives. We started the game well. First 20, 25 minutes, we were a much better side. We've seen it, though, haven't we, in other away games, especially where we start okay, 10, 15 minutes. This was a bit more of a prolonged period without creating a great deal. But we looked like we were up for the game. We really did. We looked like we were playing with a little bit of pressure off. It wasn't a league game. We got a good win a few days earlier. But, the same habits reappeared. Once we faced a bit of adversity, we went 1-0 down. And you just knew at that point. I think the players know at that point, which is the problem. Never mind the fans and the players. They then, mentally.
Players have decided their own fate the minute a goal goes in against them.
100%. We haven't seen us really come back from a deficit so much this season. I think, after Thursday, where we did hit some big adversity, we lost a lad. I thought the refereeing was appalling in that game anyway. Take that out of the equation. But we faced that adversity head on with obviously a partisan crowd at Goodison Park and managed to get an unbelievable 3 points. And you just thought maybe that'll, the switch will now be flicked going forward and the players can show a little bit more.
The first 20 suggested that, didn't it?
I think massively so. I think we were all sitting there, whether we went the game or we were at home watching it, thinking this is a really positive start. And Palace just couldn't get out of their half, And I think when you talk about momentum shifts, the Newcastle game, the shift was when the fella tied themselves to the goalpost. For us, it sort of slowed them down, stopped the game. We sort of reset, and that sort of moved things in our favour. The Palace game, Andros Townsend's injury, he started quite brightly. I think that took it out of our rhythm almost. And from that moment, the game changed. And it's not an excuse by any stretch of the imagination. When you lose a game of football, it's not so much about the loss itself, losing the game. It's the manner of the defeat.
That's definitely it.
Well, the concern is...
Sorry, go ahead, mate.
I was going to say, the concern is we've been at Spurs and ship 5. We've gone to a mid-table Palace and now ship 4. That's the concern.
Well, it is a concern. And I think you mentioned there, in some quarters, you could almost argue the case for going out of the FA Cup. We have a league status that we need to try and maintain, and we have to focus on getting results in the league. And we don't want extra fixture pile up maybe, but if you go out, I think that kind of argument can be levelled when you lose 1-0, 2-1. To lose 4-0 to a side that, even though they're having a good season, they're still in the bottom half, I think.
Yeah, they've done well under Vieira. Vieira's settled them after a few years of Roy Hodgson, who kept them in the league. They did well. It's got to be said. He sort of built a platform for Vieira to build on. Vieira early on the season, they were down there, weren't they, Palace, and they've picked up over the last sort of maybe 8 to 10 weeks, and they've got a lot of young players in there with pace. With obviously good feet, from Zaha's a bit older now, but you've got other players in and around him who are now coming through to take over probably his mantle as he sort of gets phased out as time goes on. So they're a good side, we know that, but they're not a side that we should be going into a game fearing. There's no way Everton should have gone there and thought, bloody hell, Crystal Palace, don't really want to face them. Besides being at home, that was one of the better draws that we could have really got. But the disappointing aspect was, like you say, if you go out and you get beat 1-0, 2-1, you can accept it a bit more because the players, it was a tighter game.
That suggests a fight was put up.
It does, and when you ship 4 goals, I mean, we can sit here and argue all day about two who should have been disallowed, and he should have been. I don't care what anyone says, and that then takes the gloss off the scoreline for them. But I think at 2-0, we just didn't seem to have much of an idea in terms of how to get back into the game. We had a couple of hard chances, but you never thought that we were going to actually cause them any kind of issue in front of their goal. And we know how fragile we are. We know how Jekyll and Hyde this side is. And, the Newcastle game wasn't particularly great, let's be honest. It wasn't a great performance, but what they showed us, some greater determination for the fight. And that's what I hold on to going forward. As disappointed as I am with the Palace game, the players have showed me something. Since Lampard has come in, he's got the same record, I think, as Moyes had when he first came to the club in the same number of games, which is interesting. I know the manager's defeats have not been great away from home, but it does give me some hope because we've seen us play some nice stuff.
In fairness, Moyes started brilliantly at Everton when he came in, but I'm sure he lost like 6-1 to Newcastle in like the first month.
So it's not an easy job to come in and get a side
down the bottom end of the table.
Yeah, no confidence. Away records appalling. Players have gone through a lot this season in terms of management, obviously changing hands. You've got certain staff members who've been moved on, fallouts with big name players, and players being moved on, losing our 3 most creative players basically for the whole season, pretty much. So it's a big shift for the players, but what we still expect is we still expect what we saw on Thursday, and that's the heart and that desire for the fight. And when we didn't see it then a few days later, starts a question. But what I would say, I try and be as balanced as I can, because I'm not one of these, I'm not all in for this doom and gloom. We've got to try and be as positive as we can. We played at 7:45 Thursday at a game that lasted 107 minutes in the end. We then get asked to go and play a half-12 game on the Sunday. So we've done a recovery session on the Friday and maybe a light training session on the Saturday, and then that's been it. We've got loads of players cup side. Alan was suspended. That was horrific in itself. We've got illness in the camp. There was a lot of things went against us before that game. So I still do have that hope inside me that, when we have this, after this 2-week break, get a few players back in. I know we've got a tough game against West Ham, but I'm trying not to dwell too much on what was overall a poor performance.
Yeah, it was a very poor performance. I mean, some of the defending was pathetic. All, like you'd say, that's the positive, I think, is to take away from this, is that most of our players are that rubbish. They're not getting in the England team anymore. So not many of these players are getting sent away to international camps. The ones that are generally the ones that are good enough anyway. The ones that might need extra work to maybe fit to work this system. This is the first chance, I think, that Lampard's had since he came in as manager. Obviously, we had that sort of break period between the Benitez sacking before Lampard came in, but he himself hasn't really had a window without a game to really get some coaching done and really sort of try and almost like a bit of a mini pre-season to try and get his ideas across to his players, because obviously he's come in and confidence is on the floor. He's got a couple of results at home, and generally it's been poor. But we've been, like you say, depleted in terms of the personnel. We've also been on the wrong end of some bad decisions. A lot's gone against us, and we haven't had much of a chance to, really step back and regroup. I think this is probably the opportunity we need. Like I say, most of our lesser players who perhaps have been let inside down haven't got international commitments. So hopefully, he gets those players on the training ground and tries to, really put them through the paces over the next week and a half, 2 weeks in the run-up to West Ham.
Yeah, it's a big opportunity for him and his coaching staff to sit down with the players, and they'll get a break. They get a few days off, and as much as people kick off and moan and say they should be in every day, they need to have a break. They've got from a mental point of view, whether you like them, don't like them, whatever the situation might be with your feelings towards players, they've still got to be able to switch off and take themselves away, because It's mentally tough for ourselves, obviously, as fans. Of course, it is
They
when
must be
you're
under some
involved in
strain.
it.
I get that, but I think we need to knock on the head. We need to knock on the head at all. Mason Holgate getting bashed for sitting in the bookies. Like, that's it. We don't need that because, you know, you've had a bad day at work. I bet you've been the bookies once and put money on a horse.
The thing is, he can do whatever he wants. If you want to, outside of football, and I know it was Gary Neville brought up, didn't he, about the United players after.
Again, I disagree.
I do. Players. I have to say, we have this discussion on our podcast about the, to some players, they are just good at football naturally. They don't enjoy it. It's not the dream job, but they earn very, very good money for doing something they're good at, and it's just a job. So they are allowed to switch off and go and do whatever they want to do. I mean, Alan was just in Asda over the road from me then. So was he not allowed to go to shops and get some food in with his kids? Do you know what I mean? It's something he chooses to do outside of playing football. It makes Holgate wants to go and put a bet on a horse. That's up to him. I mean, taking photographs of him and things like that. What's that about? That's the problem with the modern world, isn't it?
I think that is. I think you could say, "Oh, it's our fan base," but it's not. It goes well beyond our fan base because, like you say, Gary Neville's laying into the Man United players because Rashford's. What did Rashford do? He went for a kneel or something.
Yeah, and it was Ranić, but was he at the cricket or something like that?
Or at the cricket or something.
It's just crazy. Sancho, I think, went to a concert.
Someone went to boxing or something.
They are allowed a life outside of football, and as fans, it's for us. It probably it does mean more than to probably 99.9% of players. For ourselves, probably Anthony Gordon and John Joe Kenny aside, it won't mean more to the other players than it does to ourselves. But they are allowed to do whatever they want to do. If they've got time off, if they're not training outside of their training schedule, that's the free time. It's up to them. They can't just sit in the house moping around. That's what Neville was alluding to. But
that's what they should be doing. It's not right.
Not for me. Not for me. I think that's a nonsense really. And I think Lineker tried to say that. He said, "Well, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you go and do something outside of football?
Something to try and take your mind off having a bad day at work. I know I have bad days at work, and you want to, go and take your mind off it and do something you're enjoying, something away from that sort of, you're trying to compartmentalize your life when things are going difficult, don't you?
Yeah, I don't think sort of almost micromanaging what players do as fans. And I think, like you say, it's not just us; it's all fans from every club. They have people who do it. It's everyone walks around with a phone and a camera on. Everyone's got access to Twitter, Facebook, whatever it might be. So it's easy nowadays to take a picture of a player doing something which players have done for donkey's years. Do you know what I mean?
What players haven't gone on the bookies?
Yeah, of course. I mean, most players nowadays will do it online, wouldn't he? But he's probably just passed one and thought, there's a race on or boxing or UFC, whatever it might be. I want to throw a bet on him, just passing. That's up to him. Let him do what he wants to do. It's not helpful. I think what we need to be doing is we need to be sort of galvanised as a fan base. We've been saying it for weeks and weeks now. Let's be galvanised. Let's be united. We've all got our opinions on certain players. We've all got our opinions on who we think is good enough and who's not. It doesn't really matter. What matters is this football club staying in the Premier League. So at this moment in time, we've got to be united as a fan base. If you see a player out and about, if you feel the need to say anything to them, say hello. You know what I mean?
Let on to them, be pleasant to them. In fact, if anything, that'll lift them going into games, I think. Knowing the fans are being like amicable towards them, even in this period of adversity, and probably, if anything, give a massive lift to the confidence, I'd say.
Holgate saying that at the weekend, someone, because he clocked them taking a picture. It's not a great picture, but it's obviously him. Clocked them taking the picture. What does he think there? Do you know what I know? It's part of his job in terms of you're in the public eye. You got to expect people taking pictures, but it's the way it was then lashed up, and then he was then sort of hauled over, sort of hot coals almost for doing something outside of his job. And it's just like, okay, like you say, we all have bad days at the office. We all want to take our mind off work, and that's what he wants to do. That's up to him.
Absolutely. I think we've got to be a bit more compassionate. I think I know some of these players are lousy, and I'm the first person to say that. I think some of them are absolute scum for the way they've sort of treated this club with contempt at times. But at the end of the day, there's you know, there's more to life than football. And, you know, I think that's a very good mantra for us as Everton fans to take for the next week and a half while we have a nice welcome break away from it all.
That's it. You know, you use this time as fans to go and refresh yourself, because it is hard work.
I'm talking about the training ground. I'm talking about the training ground with the players and regrouping. We as fans can maybe regroup as well, come back in a more like, hopefully clear our heads and have a bit more of a positive frame of mind for the, you know, the running now.
We've got to, you know, we've got to take ourselves away, enjoy your time, you know, obviously with family, friends, doing bits and pieces, and you know, it's mentally draining following football. It's more mentally draining when your club are in the predicament that we find ourselves in. It's tough. We've all had bad days after defeats. You know, we probably find it harder, myself and you and what have you, because we choose to talk about it on a weekly basis, if not more. In your case, and you know, that goes one of two ways. Either it's sort of like counselling in one sense, and you can get things off your chest, I suppose, and you can talk things out. And then other days, you know yourself, you feel like, you know, I just can't be asked discussing them because it affects you so much.
Really pushes you like to the wit's end, doesn't it?
It does, you know, but we're all human, as the players are. So, you know, let's take ourselves away. I tried to say this, I think, this morning on Twitter. Ignore Chris Sutton, ignore like Danny
definitely
Murphy,
ignore him, Warnock,
and all that. Yeah, it's just nonsense. But that's the modern day football media, isn't it? You know, the
24-hour media, they've got to find something to talk about to make themselves relevant.
Yeah, of course, and you know, it's all sensationalized, and it's you know, TalkSport are the worst for it. They say things because they want people to ring up or react to it, because for them it gets people listening to the shows, and just don't listen to them. Just don't give them any kind of airtime. Don't fan the flames. Like I say, let's take ourselves away. Let's regroup as a fan base, and then, you know, we've got West Ham a week on Sunday, and you know, we've sold out. Of course, we have. We're always there, and we'll back the lads as best we can. You know, because we've got some pivotal games coming up now. The final part of the season, the most important part of the season. We could find ourselves, you know, within that first week post international break. We've got 3 games, tough games. You know, West Ham, Burnley, and United. We've got a great chance to pull ourselves away. Let's think about that. You know, if we pull 5 points out of there, by the way, we're pulling ourselves away. So let's think about trying to be a bit more positive. And things could look a whole lot different in the space of another 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, we definitely need to start picking up points. But I think, like I say, this sort of 2 weeks now has got to be a period of almost like a belated period of bedding in for Lampard. I think he's got to really go back to the drawing board, and, you know, obviously I think Paul Clement's on board as well. Really work on set piece. I think that'd be a big thing that I would focus on in the next 2 weeks. You know, a lot of these games we started relatively strongly, and like you say, a goal's gone in from a set piece more often than not, and that's derailed the whole game plan. You know, I think set piece defending has got to be worked on.
Yeah, and we looked all right, I think, early doors when Lampard first came in, and we looked all right attacking set pieces as well, actually. You know, we were a threat ourselves, and that was a lot of work that Paul Clement has put in on the training ground. But I think the constant sort of changing of the defence has not particularly helped things. We know it's come through injuries and illnesses and things like that. And, you know, ideally, we would have Mykolenko will be up to speed, and he'll be playing left back, and we could then put Godfrey in the middle with Michael Keane. Obviously, Mean is injured. And whether you play Coleman or whether people, you know, cry for Patterson to get a game, you know, we'd be more settled. But we've also had illness to both keepers. After a decent game against Newcastle, he would have started for all the world against Palace. He obviously got ill, got what Pickford had. Pickford got rushed back. He was ill. He was still ill, but he was asked to play the game. You know, so that we've been so unsettled at the back. You know, changing the personnel, injuries, illness, suspensions, going from a 4 to a 5 or a 3, however you want to look at it. Not that really helpful. We've got to settle. We've got to settle. We've got to settle on a
regardless of whether the players get back from injuries or not. That has to stop. 4 at the back, no messing, don't change it. Even if the most important centre-back gets injured, you put someone else at centre-back and you stick with 4 at the back. Changing the system is worse than playing a member of the team out of position, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and 3 at the back has never worked at Everton. It never has worked.
No, and whether as we move on under Frank Lampard, we can move to a 3-4-3. But for the moment, a 4-3-3 is pretty adaptable in terms of you can go to a five in midfield if it needs to. You can drop someone deeper. You can put someone from the midfield three just behind, obviously, your striker. So it's quite an adaptable formation, really. And I'd like to see us stick with that, because when we have those three players in the middle, Alanda Corey and Van der Beek, we looked a lot more secure, but also we looked a lot more technically, I think, better. And we've also, I think, between the three of them, they've also looked quite creative at times as well. One will go, or two will go, one will sit. And I think it certainly caused Leeds issues when we look at that game, and we look at how well we played. And I think we need to get back to that, stick to a formation so the players can understand what the job is. And it just gets a little bit easier, I think, going forward. But it's not been easy. And I think a lot of the calls where he's getting slated left, right, and centre, I think they're very, very premature. And I think we've got to be careful what we're saying here as fans. Don't pick up on, I think it was Chris Sutton saying about Lampard calling the players out. It's a dangerous game. Just wind your neck in.
It's absolute. If the players put in lazy performances, the players should be called out. And he said it himself in the press conference. He's tried to butter them up. He's tried to be positive with reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is, it's the best way to start out. But there's only so long you can go on with that and accepting poor performances. He's doing the right thing. And and all these it's a dangerous game. The players might stop playing. If he stopped playing for him, that's on the players. It's not on Lampard. He's doing the right thing.
And it won't be anything new to the players. Behind closed doors, he will be telling them and will have told them. And I'm sure he'll be pulling players to one side and saying, "Listen, this was down to you. This was down to you." He's the manager of the football club, and it's up to him to hold people responsible for anything that happens in a game and mistakes and things like that. And I've got no issue with that. I mean, if players can't deal with that, then I'm sorry, but you shouldn't be a professional footballer, because that's part of the game. We know some players probably react to an arm around the shoulder more than being moaned at, but you've got to take it on the chin.
You've got to balance it. I think you've got to get the right balance, and I think he's trying to do that.
Yeah, these players have been, some of them have been there for numerous managers now, so some of them have got to take a portion of the blame and accept that maybe they haven't been good enough. Maybe whether it's their attitude, maybe whether it's just their ability, the footballing brain, whatever it might be. Some of them just haven't been good enough and deserve, as a group, to be called out. And they've got to take responsibility. It's as simple as that. And I'm not here to single out anyone in particular. I never do that. I've never go over individual players and slag them off. I don't think it's particularly constructive. But as a collective group, as a football club, as a team, as a squad, they've got to be sitting down thinking, well, what have we done here over the last sort of 8 months? Because there's no way that this squad and this side should be anywhere near that bottom three. Based on ability, there's no way. Mentality is different, and mental fragility is a different kettle of fish.
Precisely, I think Chris Sutton needs to walk a mile in Lampard's shoes before he says any of that nonsense. Because I'd like to see what Chris Sutton would do in the manager's hot seat, but we won't, because he hasn't got the guts.
No, and being a pundit nowadays is very, very easy. You respect pundits who've played the game at the top level. At the end of the day, he was a Premier League winner at his time at Blackburn, and he played for numerous clubs in the Premier League. But I think just because you've been a footballer, it doesn't give you the right, or doesn't mean that your opinion, I think, is worth anything more than anyone else. I think it's too easy to criticise as a pundit in the modern game. Until you go behind closed doors and see what's happening at each club, you never really know. That's like, Neville probably knows more about United, but does he know everything what's going on? Certainly not. No. Times have changed since he was a footballer. Chris Sutton saying doesn't know, and Stephen Warnock definitely doesn't know. So
Stephen Warnock doesn't think gegenpressing's Gangnam Style.
I know it says it all, doesn't it? It says it all. That's what we're up against. But just switch off them. They're just lunatics, aren't they?
Honestly, Liverpool might put 4 past us with gegenpressing, but they might manage 6 if they try Gangnam style.
That's it. Get them on board. Get them on the coaching staff with those kind of inspiring words.
Indeed. But that's what I mean. These players, these ex-players, the pundits that you see, many of them haven't really ventured into management. So, it's easy for them to slate other managers and their decision making, but they haven't experienced the scenarios themselves.
Most definitely, they haven't got the managerial experience, the majority, and also a lot of them played at a time, which was totally different to the modern footballer. We even just throw into the mix social media and how much that their lives are under so much scrutiny on a daily basis. Some of these older professionals never went through all that. Even in early years of the Premier League, it wasn't like that.
Well, namely, to be honest, one of my biggest pet hates, to be honest, that is really worse than social media, in my opinion, is actually the emergence of 24-hour sports news. You talk sports, maybe Sky Sports News, because there's people who are putting things under the microscope that never were put under the microscope before. And I think that needs to, obviously it's not going to go away, but football would be a lot better if it did, or it did to some extent.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's, like you say, this 24-hour need for sports news.
Instant gratification, trying to find something new and interesting to talk about. And
they're all trying to beat.
Spout rubbish as a result.
Yeah, they do. And you look at some of the shows that Sky Sports News throw on, around sort of the transfer windows and when they all
doomsday clocks for Berry going out of business.
Yeah, it's all a nonsense. But that is the modern world. Like I say, it's all about sensationalizing everything. Everything's under the microscope. And it, I do sort of sympathise if that's for want of a better word with the modern footballer, and people say they earn all this kind of money, and I get all that, and I know part of their job is the public, being in the public eye, but I think that the scrutiny that they're under, I think is incredible. And so, do all have the same mentality to be able to deal with that? They certainly don't.
Everyone's different, though. Goes for all walks of life.
Yeah, and you can train them as much as you want mentally, and some people just aren't open to that. Some people just can't take it on board, and I think it's difficult. And there's no wonder why, in our position, why the criticism that players are getting regularly, why when we go to the game on a Saturday, why we're seeing such poor performances week in, week out, because it will impact players on an individual basis as well.
Yeah, there's must be, obviously there's a lot we don't know going on in any footballers, as you don't know. But I think, like I say, that sensationalisation and that trying to cause faux outrage almost, that doesn't do the confidence of any footballer at the top or the bottom of the table. I don't think that does anyone any good. Look at the stick that Rashford's had recently, and what a brilliant young man he is. And he's been put through the mill, and that sort of almost it's almost like an anti-Rashford campaign that's been whipped up. It's been whipped up.
People are quick to forget, aren't they? He was the hero of the country almost as we were going through the pandemic and lockdown and things like that. And he had a difficult summer with obviously injury and him missing the penalty in the European Championship finals, and his form's not being great for United. And you see him, at the end of the day, someone pushed the button the other day, and he turned around and gave it back, and he didn't like it. And I thought, what? Fair play to you.
Hats off.
If Alex Iwobi, I'm not being funny, just as an example, he gets a lot of stick, and we know his form has not been great since he was signed. But if an Everton fan did that to Alex Iwobi and give it back, I'd applaud them, because the human beings, and thinking that you've got a right as a fan to say whatever you want to say without any kind of repercussion is just the absolutely incredible, really, that anyone can think they've got a right to criticise without getting something back. And I think Alex Iwobi is a good example, because we look at what he did on Thursday. He was the hero with
really well taken goal.
Great goal, great build up. I thought all game he was good. I thought his attitude was spot on. And to be fair, under Frank Lampard at home, I think he's been one of our better players, to be perfectly honest.
Yes, yeah.
His attitude
I'll be honest, I was very surprised not to see him in the lineup at Palace.
I think it was just tiredness. He played the full game, didn't he, against Newcastle? Such a short turnaround. I understood why there was changes for the game. I really did, but he's gone from villain to hero. And like you say, everyone was then saying, "Oh, he's got to start on Sunday. He's got to start," and it just shows you the fickle mind of human beings and football fans and what have you. And yeah, maybe the fact he was on probably cloud nine after Thursday.
You're talking about it's not just obviously fickleness; it's about maybe some positive momentum.
Oh yeah, no, of course. But I just think as football fans, I think that things are easily forgotten. So in Rashford's case, it was all the good work that he's done off the pitch, and as a footballer, he's a very, very talented footballer. And in Iwobi's case, it was the other end of the spectrum. He's been getting slated forever and a day. Does that on Thursday, and now everyone loves him. And that's just a sign of your modern day football fan. But I was surprised in a sense not to see him on Sunday, I've got to say. But like I say, that's with the turnaround time being so small, with him playing that full game, the energy, the emotion, and things like I understood why he wasn't. But another player who's played himself into contention for when we go away to West Ham in a couple of weeks.
Absolutely. I think with that in mind, obviously we'll finish up in a moment, but looking ahead to West Ham, it is a period now, as we've said on months of occasions now in this show. Regroup and get all these players' energy levels back up because they're going to need it for this running. Plenty of like training sessions for anyone who doesn't go away to international camps. Really put these players through the paces and get the players sort of on the same wavelength. That's what I think. Sometimes it feels like we're watching players who don't know each other. I think Lampard really needs to get that into the players' heads and get a bit more cohesion amongst the players and get them used to his system and get a bit more flow to the game because we are really struggling for that at the moment.
I think it'll do in the world of good. The likes of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who's obviously struggled with injury and he's being rushed back. Godfrey, Damari Gray is obviously he's nowhere near his level because of illness and injury. And even some of the younger players, getting them in the round and training sessions as he's been doing. He's got time to work with the defence, and obviously the coaches will work with them in more detail because quite a large percentage of our squad has not gone away. Obviously, like your Charleston's, Pickford, Andy Gordon's gone with the 21s, hasn't he?
Strangely enough, Doucouré's gone to play for Mali, hasn't he?
He has, yeah, he's gone. So not great for us. It's another one who's travelling fairly.
He needed the rest as well. He's been really leggy since he come back from his injury.
I don't think he's probably really recovered from his injury, to be honest with you. I think we've seen him the last few weeks. Like you say, he's looked leggy. He's not playing his natural game. He's not looking. No, he's going sideways. He's going backwards. He hasn't got much confidence. So it'd be great for him to have had a couple of weeks where he has a few days off and he's just training with the side. But Lampard's got quite a few players there to work with over the next.
I tell you what, one player we haven't mentioned there in that list of players who really use this mini pre-season, if you like, is Dele Alli. We've barely seen anything of him since we brought him in, and he's a player who on his day can make a difference, but he's not been up to it at all so far. Whether he's got it in him, we'll have to wait and see. But he needs his fitness levels lifting a little bit as well.
He does, but we also need to play a style of football that suits Dele Alli. He plays his best football this game. So if we're going to play a midfield, and then you sit two players behind him. So I feel for him a little bit because we don't particularly play a formation which suits Dele Alli. But his time will come. He's on a 2.5-year deal. I think he'll be used obviously in these last handful of games. And like you say, maybe fitness is a bit of an issue. Maybe he's not totally ready to go from the off. But he seems to be, a big part of things. You see him at the end of the Newcastle game. He was on the pitch straight away, hugging Coleman. He seems a big part of that squad. He's close to Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He travelled to the game, I think, in his Rolls Royce together, and what have you. He went home in his Rolls Royce, So, listen, I think he's important. He's got quality. He's at the right age bracket. We know how good he is. We've seen him do it at Tottenham for many, many years. and I think he will be an important member of that squad as we get to the end of the season.
Yeah, I think, like I say, I think this sort of time off now is going to be a good time for him to really bed in properly again. Some of these players haven't had that sort of bedding in period, so this is that opportunity now. Hopefully, we come back, refreshed and ready to bounce back, and get a result at West Ham, and the right result, and that's a real platform to build on. Then hopefully,
what we need, it's in this league, anything can happen when it comes to results. And you look at even Tottenham going to Man City. You would have thought they had gone there and beat a strong Man City side. And all sides can go somewhere and get something. And we just need something like that. Even just a point at West Ham, I think, would be massive for us. Just to think, well, look where they are, look where we are. Do really well in Europe as well. The confidence must be sky high. If we can go there and nick something, that for me would be really positive going into the Burnley game, which is a game which, well, it's just not lose, isn't it? If we keep on picking up points and we can keep the likes of Burnley and Watford at arm's length, so we don't get any closer to us, then that's what we need to be doing. They're the two teams of concern. We've got to just literally from now to the end of the season get one more point than those two, and we stay in the Premier League. So that's what's going to be on the players' minds. Be professional, approach each game on its own merit, and give your all for the club and for your job effectively. But one game at a time.
And thankfully, no game for nearly 2 weeks now, so a welcome break for us all. There you have it, guys. Crystal Palace 4, Everton 0. Let us know your opinions on the game and all the topics that myself and Mike have discussed, and going into the running, how you feeling? Get these comments in, give us a like, subscribe for more content, and until next time, guys, thanks for watching on the Toffee Blues.